Welcome to Towel Capes. I'm Cody Nestor, and he's Andrew Hernandez back again. Welcome, Andrew.
Back by Zero Demand to give my garbage opinion on movies. Thank you for having me.
Unpopular demand. He's back, ladies and gentlemen. And today we're here to talk about the art house slasher film, maybe I would say, In a Violent Nature. Could you hear the higher register when I said the word art house, Andrew?
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking me to be on for all the good films you review. Uh, just really
Yes.
excited.
You're you're really just knocking them out of the park. First trigger warning, now In a Violent Nature, which I'm kind of sensing how you might have felt about this movie, but before we get
No.
into it, let me start off by asking you, what do you think the story was for In a Violent Nature?
So it's Sloth from the Goonies. He goes by Johnny in this film. He gets woken up from his slumber, and he's not too happy about it, and he's fixing to make it everyone's problem.
Yeah, fair fair depiction. Yeah, he looks like me after a Saturday night. What you talk about. Yeah, this had been on my radar for a while. Like I remember it's one of those like it seems like every film nowadays like comes out. It come out earlier in the year. I want to say January, February. And it seems like every horror film now comes out and they have this like the marketing campaign behind it. It's like, oh, it's the most the kills are so brutal, the violence is so violent. There's I think there was a rumor or some kind of stories like, oh, people were vomiting in the theaters, and I'm like,
Jesus Christ.
okay, well, if and like every movie that comes out now, it has that is like, oh, it's the scariest thing like you've ever seen. It's like the scariest film since The Exorcist and all this stuff, and I'm like, well, it was hyped up pretty well. I remember kind of seeing some good reviews and seeing people kind of enjoy it, and it just kind of stayed on my list. And now that there's not so many big films right now coming out that I'm interested in, I thought we'd go back and let Todd kind of stay in his old man chair at home and kind of go back through some of these. And I kind of sent you a list. We kind of agreed on it. I don't know if we chose wisely or not. So that's my first question to you. I don't really know after I watched it, and it's been a couple weeks since we've been trying to film this, so we might not be as fresh memory wise as we were when we exactly watched it to start. But I remember watching it and I'm like, I don't really know how I feel about this film. So I'm really super interested to hear what you thought about it first off.
Yeah, no, I think I was a victim of their marketing too. Like you said, I'd seen a couple trailers and they're like, "Oh, this is the most gory, violent film," and I'm like, "Oh, hell yeah!" I hadn't watched a good horror film since When Evil Lurks, I think the year before, and I thought that it was going to kind of be in that same vein of like this smaller, not as big mainstream horror film that was fixing to come out, and boy, I couldn't have been more fucking wrong. This is just it's so fucking boring and lifeless, and there's just so much wrong with this film, and it's not good.
I don't. I think lifeless is a good term, and dull. Like, yeah, like I think this is one of those. It's like I don't hate it, but
I do.
there's a lot wrong with fair. There's a lot wrong with it, and like I think yeah, it's more of a victim of the marketing. I think we both were. It was like it's so scary. Some guy shit himself. Like it's like one of those movies. Like when people were passing out in the lobby, and I'm like, from boredom. Like I don't really understand. I was looking up the director. The director is Chris Nash. And I looking up his filmography. I'm like, I really never heard of this guy. And that's probably for a good reason because this is his first real actual outright film. Chris Nash is known for ABCs of Death 2 in 2014, Life Changer 2018, and In a Violent Nature 2024. Really seems like he's made his bones really as a special effects artist. He's got 15 special effects credits, 9 director's credits, but out of those, 7 of them are shorts or kind of short films or segments. One's a music video. and one is a full length film being in a violent nature. So like he doesn't really have a really a track record of success or anything like that. Like this is really his first opportunity to make a film, and I think it's very mixed results. I think you're a little harder on it right now than I am. I think I don't like I said I don't hate it, but I like it's got a lot of problems, and like it didn't live up to the hype I heard or surrounding it. Let's just say that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
So let's kind of get into it a little bit here. So, this was always the premise was always sold to me as like it's Friday the 13th from Jason's point of view, right?
Hmm.
That was the selling point, and I'm like, all right, I can back that premise. So instead of Jason, we get Johnny here, Andrew. So tell us about Johnny and his tragic backstory and what he's looking for.
So Johnny's he's developmentally delayed, I guess a nice way of putting it. Child
Same,
in a
same.
very small, just town out in the middle of nowhere. He's the son of a shop owner out there, and he gets tricked into going up a fire tower because they tell him there's toys up there, and so he makes his way up there. He climbs. Little does he know that somebody's up there waiting for him in a fireman's mask. Scares him. He falls off the building and he dies. That's about all the setup we get for Johnny's past.
Yeah, this setup too is delivered basically by kind of your tropey uh horny teens around a campfire giving you the what little exposition you get for this film. There's a dude named Aaron. It's kind of telling the story. He's like a stoner guy, and you kind of get Johnny's backstory. Wasn't it Johnny's dad? Wasn't like set around he was like there was some kind of part of it. It was like they didn't like Johnny's dad because he was like so he was like a capitalist or something when he like selling stuff back to the people around the little community or something, and they're like fuck this guy and his capitalist mentality.
Yeah, something like that.
Uh, Something like that, and then they ended up killing like Johnny's dad, and then like Johnny, I think they killed Johnny first by accident. I think they ended up killing his dad or something like that. But basically, through all this bullshit, his spirit did not rest. Andrew, the spirit of Johnny did not rest, and you mentioned the location too, like the fire tower stuff, like watching it, I know like I looking at some of the behind the scenes, I think Chris Nash was like from Canada. I think a lot of this is shot in Canada, but it could really easily be you could say maybe it's the Pacific Northwest. Parts of it you could almost say is like, it's like kind of a gives a West Virginia kind of coal miner vibe. Just like the location I think is for what it is, I think they selected it pretty well because it can be a lot of places and you can kind of apply it to your region a little bit. But like, just wanted to kind of mention the location there a little bit. But I think it was mostly all shot in like somewhere in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's basically our Johnny's backstory. And at the beginning of the film, we again hear some off-screen dialogue from characters that we don't see, talking about finding a necklace out in the woods, just like I guess wrapped around a metal pole near like a little shack. And one of our characters ends up taking that necklace. It was a necklace that belonged to Johnny's mom, unbeknownst to him, and that's kind of what sets everything in motion. That wakes Johnny up from his slumber. Johnny no like his necklace taken. Johnny want his mama necklace back. And so I figured the best way to kind of go through this film, because outside of the brief moments that you get kills, you don't get much. You get some off-screen dialogue, and there's a lot of Johnny walking through the forest, set to the sounds of nature.
Yeah, I'd
That's
probably.
mostly it.
Yeah, I think you could watch this movie at like one and a half speed, and just get through some of that
Yeah.
walking through, just a little bit faster, because boy, there sure is a lot of it.
Yeah, and I mean, I know that's the premise and everything, and I know, but like, I feel like there's got to be a better way to fill in that dead time a little bit more. Like, I know it's not really trying to show from the character's perspective other than Johnny, but yeah, boy, it's a lot of walking simulator.
Hmm.
It's a lot of that. So I figure we'll go through these kills. We'll kind of talk about them if we have anything to say. But I want you to kind of give me a score for each kill. Give me a 1 to 10 score. You know, one kind of being the worst, 10 being the best. We'll kind of start off here. I think I have them all in order. I think I have them all right. I'm not sure. I was very high on cocaine during this entire time. But we have Chuck the Trapper. He is our first victim. He is arguing with some guy. It might even be the ranger. I wasn't sure about that. If it was clear who he was arguing with about basically placing traps down in the forest and it being like a tourist spot and worrying about whoever he was arguing with, worrying about somebody getting caught in him. But Johnny runs up on him. This guy like slowly runs away, and I mean slowly runs
Oh
away
yeah,
in complete the worst direction possible. Instead of running to the highway or to the road that was
right
literally
next to
right
his
there, he
house.
runs to it. Yeah, right next to his house. He runs into the forest by being chased by this big man, and of course he steps into his own trap, and he's basically killed off screen, kind of up against an abandoned car. And Johnny kind of gets him there. So what did you think of Chuck the Trapper? What's the 1 to 10 on Chuck the Trapper?
Chuck the Trapper gets a 1. I mean, yeah, I mean, you see him run off into the woods, but since we're following Johnny and his point of view, we don't see when he gets caught in the little bear trap thing, and you just see Johnny walk up on him, and then you don't even get to see the kill. You just see like a bloody hand afterwards. So we get
Yeah,
nothing. I give it a
exactly.
1, whatever.
Yeah. Fair, yeah. I mean, it's very that it really set a tone because it's very awkward. The way that dude's running around is like, oh no, and like just slowly looking back at Johnny. I'm like, you could literally walk to the road and keep a brisk pace and outpace this guy down to the sheriff's office or wherever you can go.
Exactly.
I just it set a weird
And
tone
he
right
had
off
plenty of
the
time to
bat.
just get in his truck because Johnny's just a slow saunter, you know.
Yeah, Yeah, they kinda play like hide and seek a little bit around the house and stuff. So, like, yeah, just like rope a dope him a little bit and get in the truck. And I don't know. Again, you don't have a plot of one of these films without dumb victims, but this felt even more egregiously dumb than some of the things you see nowadays, at least.
Right.
Um, Victim number 2, Aaron the Pothead, and our exposition king, who was the one that told us about the origin of Johnny and the story of Johnny. Uh, he's out taking a piss, walking around, smoking his ganja, and a hacksaw is pulled through his head or his mouth from behind a tree. What do you think about Aaron's death here, one to
No,
ten?
I actually kind of like this one. I thought just anything having to do with your mouth, I don't know, like for some reason just like physically makes me cringe. So when he
Right.
just pulled that thing right through and cut his head in half, I'm just like, oh shit, that's pretty hardcore. And I'm like, okay, this makes up for the trapper guy, and I'm like, all right, maybe we're in for some good stuff. So I like this one. I'd give it like a I don't know, like 7, 8, pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't mind this one. The actual kill I don't mind. Now, the ramifications of the kill, I feel like this kill should have went to someone else. Maybe this should have been how we killed Chuck the Trapper in the woods.
Right.
Like maybe Chuck the Trapper, he steps in his own trap. He's thinking he kind of got away though. He's huffing and puffing up against a tree, and Johnny pulls a hacksaw through his mouth. And the reason I say it should have been someone else is because I think this kill should have not involved someone's head where you'd have to fake a dummy, because Johnny spends the next 10 minutes clearly dragging a dummy behind him to the
Oh my
ranger
God,
station.
that was so funny. It was making me laugh at like how obvious like that is the worst looking dummy that they're dragging around.
Yeah, and I'm like, I just imagine, I'm like, if you hadn't have messed with his head and the keel, you could have had this be a real person and had it be a little bit more ominous instead of hilarious. Because, I mean, you would have to, is that the point though? Is it intentionally bad? Like, what do you think there?
I don't think it was intentionally bad because like I think they set out to make like a serious horror film because nothing else in the movie seems like it's supposed to be like, comedic relief or any dialogue in it supposed to be anything like that. So I think it's just maybe they just had a small budget to work with, and that's what they got, and they try to make do with what they had, and it just did not. They didn't execute it as good as they thought that they did.
Yeah, I was there was a lot of this like these kills that I'm like, are we supposed to be in on the joke as the audience? Like, as we this is one of the girls by the lake is one because like some of the effects, obviously, this is like kind of it had to be like a shoestring budget. I didn't look up the budget. It has to be like a low budget shoestring slasher film, reminiscent of your early '80s kind of budget. But I'm like, are we supposed to be in on the joke, or is this really your best earnest effort? And if it is, I would have really rethought the decision to make Johnny carry around that really egregiously bad looking dummy for 10 minutes up to that, and then just chuck it into that
Oh,
wall, that
that
glass wall, glass case to get Johnny's get his firefighter mask and his hatchet
uh,
and all that stuff.
bro, that got such a
Like,
good
I don't know,
laugh out of
like,
me just watching that flimsy just doll, get flung up against that wall. Made me laugh so
yeah,
hard. I'm like,
exactly.
what is going on here?
Yeah, and I think that's why you kill Chuck the Trapper that way because he's whatever, and then you just kill Aaron another way. Maybe you stick something through the middle of him, and he can have a bloody sternum, and you can drag a real person behind the camera, and it feel more ominous than me being distracted by the clear dummy that Johnny was holding or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. Kill number 3, Brody. She's lesbian girl number 1. She's just drowned in a lake while swimming.
Yeah.
What do you think of
Yeah, no, so at this point in the film, I was still on board. I'm like, okay, you know, they can't all be crazy over the top kills. You gotta save some of that for some of the other guys. There's still plenty of other of the camper guys. And I'm like, all right, I'll give this a pass. She's dragged out in a lake, whatever. Who cares? Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, this one, it was very yeah, I agree with you, like, I don't know what I expected of this one, I was just when it was over with, I'm like, "Oh, well, that was not what I expected," and not bad, but I'm like, my big takeaway, Johnny don't need to breathe.
I
Johnny,
mean, he's
Johnny very supernatural, I guess.
I had a question for you because I don't know how to swim. You know that.
Right.
Um, is that how that works? Like when like Johnny was going into the lake, and like you just walk towards like the bottom, like walk along the bottom of the lake. Can you do that, or is that not how that works?
Well, that's not really how that works. Johnny apparently is not a buoyant human being like the rest of us are. The rest of us are filled with air and gases and keeps us buoyant. And the rest of us would walk a certain distance, and the water would lift us up, and we would be basically at that point swimming, or in your case, drowning, if you were to do that. But Johnny apparently he's supernatural, so he can kind of walk along the bottom of a lake apparently and just get away with that. But the rest of us, we float.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I just
So yeah,
again, I didn't since I don't
yeah,
know how to swim. I
not
didn't
how
know
that
if
works,
that's actually how that works or
man. Yeah,
not.
yeah, we're gonna try it though. We're gonna film it and we're gonna put you in a
Oh
lake.
hell yeah!
Next kill number 4 is Aurora, lesbian number 2. She's stabbed through the stomach with a hook before the hook is pulled back through her the opposite way, pulling her head back through her original stomach wound. By the way, I don't know how much of this I'll be able to show on YouTube. I'll have to like check these clips and see if like the full things are on YouTube because YouTube gets weird about violence sometimes. So I don't know how much of this I can show people. You might be like a lot of like unicorns covering up the violence or something I'm showing on screen at this point. Just want to put that in there. But what did you think about Aurora, lesbian yoga chick number 2, and her death?
So when we got to this one, I'm like, oh, here we go. This is what I'm talking about. This is the good stuff because I'm like, it was a pretty creative kill. Punches a hole through her, then sticks a hook in her head and yanks her head through the hole. And I'm like, damn, that's
Mhm.
that's pretty fucking brutal. And just yeah, I mean, I can see that this is probably where they spent most of their budget because boy, it is slim pickings. for everything else.
Yeah. I feel like this is what number value you give this one out of 10?
Oh, this is probably a 10. This is a solid 10.
Yeah, I think this is the strongest of the film. Now, I mean, you obviously can see there's a little obviously like some low budget effects, little shots to it, but I think it's really I overlook that because it is more creative
Yeah.
than rest, and it's not so prolonged like dragging Aaron's body for 10 minutes or that dummy that looked like Aaron for 10 minutes. I give this one like the kudos for creativity. So like, yeah, this is probably the standout of the film. There's another one that like if I remember this film, there's probably two kills that I'll remember. It's this one and another we'll talk about in just a second. But this one gets high marks for creativity. I'll give it that.
But I just
Next,
real quick,
okay.
like she's standing like on the edge of this hill, right? And it's
Mm.
not like a sharp drop off. Like you take your
Yeah,
chances.
it's just an
You
incline.
you take your chances and run down that hill, right? Instead of just
Oh yeah,
standing there
oh
like a
yeah, I
fucking
rolled my
idiot.
fat ass. Yeah, I rolled my fat ass right down it.
I like how like
I'm
she
like, "You're not
sees
getting
Johnny
me,
coming
Johnny.
and
Tuck and roll, bitch."
I like how she just stands there and she's like, well, there's nothing I can do. And I'm like, bitch, run. What the
Yeah,
fuck? And then she
yeah.
dies in the
It's
most
like,
horrible way imaginable.
yeah, I ain't going out like that. Johnny would have to get my ass at the bottom of the hill. Now I might roll down and impale myself on like a piece of wood or something, but at least I took control of my own situation. But yeah, no, my fat ass would be rolling or diving or going down that thing gingerly or something. But yeah, it reminds me of you ever see that like those TikToks where they show that like it's like that real big steady drop off decline into like the ocean, and it's like, oh, if you go down and you can't make it back up the hill, it costs you like $3,000.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking
Uh-huh.
about? That's what it reminded me of. I'm like, just tuck and roll, bitch. I'm rolling. You're not getting me, Johnny. Like you're not like just this big 6'5" dude coming out of the woods with an old firefighter's mask on. Nope, jump,
Nope. I'm
jump.
good.
Yeah, I thought about that too. Kill number 5, Evan. He's just a random bro. I thought it was gonna be really dumb for a second because like there's a shot of before Evan comes out of the house. Johnny's walking around the little cabin and like you actually clearly see that dude notice Johnny walking around the cabin.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, please tell me he actually comes out and does something to Johnny or tries to like whatever. I think he ends up shooting Johnny, and because Johnny is trying to kill Troy, which is kind of he's the dick boyfriend protagonist of the film. But Evan is actually killed kind of off screen. Really, you don't see it. He gets an axe thrown to the back of his head. What's your score for Evan?
I don't like a one. Again, off screen, who cares? I will give Evan credit though. The guy that was playing him, I think he was the only one giving it 100%. Because Troy, he's like, oh no, get away from me.
Right?
I'm like, man, this guy is never acted a day in his life or does not give a shit.
Yeah, probably both. To be fair. Yeah, for Troy, like I said, he's the dick boyfriend protagonist. He's the one that took Johnny's mother's necklace off the little metal rod at the beginning. He gets, I think Johnny hits him with a little axe in the leg or something like that, and he's crawling away in the woods, and he gets finished off by Johnny kind of crushing his head with a rock. You get kind of like an aerial view of it. How do you rate that kill?
I mean, it made me chuckle. Just the splatter. I don't know, the 4 or 5. I thought that was pretty funny. Just
Next up, and this is probably the other kill that I was talking about. Well, actually, now that I look at my last two, 7 and 8, I don't know. We'll see which one that you feel is more memorable here. But a character that really we kind of should talk about here a little bit. Our seventh kill is the Ranger, which is how he was billed. A character that kind of comes into the film. I think he was the one arguing with the trapper guy, but
yeah,
he comes back into the film. He's the one that has prior knowledge of Johnny. He is definitely kind of like the Corey Feldman of this film in terms of like he's like the Tommy Jarvis from the Friday the 13th series where he's had prior run-ins with Jason. The Rangers had prior run-ins with Johnny. He gets paralyzed before having his arm and his head chopped off slowly in a wood splitter. What did you think of this character and how he's killed, Andrew?
Oh my God, man, this dude right here, this motherfucker right here. So when Johnny shows up, the ranger guy, he's like, he shoots him, he gets him on the ground, and then he's like, "You remember my pappy? Oh, we put you down once, I'll put you down again. Fuck you.
Yeah.
And what does this
Hmm.
fucking dumbass decide to do? He decides to fucking walk right up on Johnny when he's on the ground, and he tells the dumbass next to him, like, "Hey, I'm gonna pass you the gun on the count of three, and then I'm gonna tie him up." Why not
Right.
just stand fucking 5 feet back and just pump his head full of lead, and then maybe tie him up? Like, oh, this
Yep.
this stupid motherfucker. Oh, I'm glad he died a horrible way, because I'm like, you stupid bitch, you could have fucking probably stopped this whole situation right here, but you're maybe as mentally delayed as Johnny over here, because you couldn't have fucking put this together in any worse way. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
Jesus Christ, man! Just watching this made me fucking angry. By this point, I had already just given up on the film. I'm like, this is fucking garbage. Um,
Yeah. The Ranger. That's I don't know. Like the whole thing. Like you said, like Colt, the Colt is the other guy standing there. We have Final Girl, we have Colt, who is in love with Final Girl, and he is like too much of a bitch to like tie Johnny up. And like I'm just watching the Ranger like get closer and closer. I'm like, yeah, get in grabbing distance from
yep.
him. That's great. Get into grabbing distance from him. Yeah. And like when Colt's a bitch, I'm like, listen, I will shoot you too if you don't wrap this motherfucker up. He'll kill us all. Start with his feet, and if he moves, I'll shoot him in the head.
Yeah,
Or
get
I'll just keep pumping while you I'll just keep pumping bullets in him while you wrap his feet up first.
yeah, get real close. It worked out for Ober and Martell. It'll definitely work out for you.
Exactly. Exactly. Um, what do you give what's your 1 to 10 on the Ranger? Just in terms of the slow arm chop, the head chop, all that.
Okay, so here's another question. So he was, I know he gets paralyzed. So Johnny gets him down on the ground. He gets up. He gets him down on the ground. What does he do? He reaches down and he like grabs his spine and like breaks it. Is that what happens?
Something or like I don't know if he grabs it or if it just pushes down force and like kind of breaks his spine. I really I was unsure of that. I'm not gonna lie and sit here and like I just that's why I wrote it as he was paralyzed. I'm not sure
Yeah.
how not sure the details of it. Yeah, I don't know if he's like grabbing and pulling or if he's pushing down and just using the force. I'm not really sure.
Okay. Well, and then my next question is, so he's alive through the whole next fucking 20-minute sequence, right?
Mm,
Because like I get that he's paralyzed, but you figured he would have been like, oh no, like like some like grunts or something, and I'm
right.
like, is he dead? Is he alive? The whole thing with the wood chopping thing, and I'm like, he leaves the ranger out in the parking lot. He walks
Mhm.
into the shed, taking his sweet ass time, and then he starts up the wood chopper, and then he
Mhm.
comes back out, and this is probably taking about 15 fucking minutes at this point, and
Mhm.
then he drags the ranger back in there, and then instead of just immediately putting them on there, he puts a piece of wood on there, so we are aware of like what this machine is and what's fixing to happen.
Mhm.
And I feel like this whole thing is just so fucking dragged out. Like, Jesus Christ, man. Like, fucking speed this shit up. Like, we don't have to do like these long continuous shots of like, whatever. Like, just cut to the next scene of him putting them on up there, because this was fucking unbearable. Like, why do we have to do it like this? First the wood,
Yeah,
then the arm, and
that's
then his
the art
head,
house,
and
Andrew.
fuck that. Fuck that shit. Next time you're like, hey, you want to watch an art house film? Fuck no. I'm good.
No, I don't. I agree with you though. I don't. I think that'll be the defense of it. Is like, oh, that's the art house. It's long takes and it's this and that. I'm like, but yeah, I think we could have sped this up a little bit. I first thought he was going to like go into that shed and turn on a wood chipper and just Fargo him. That's
I
what I
I
thought.
Yeah, I thought that when he turned it on, I'm like, damn, that's a pretty loud machine. That's what I thought too. I'm like, oh, like a wood chipper, that'd be pretty fucking brutal. Nah.
Real quick. And better for us as the audience because it's much quicker.
Yeah.
I don't think that dude was talking because I was kind of trying to look at it and I didn't really research it because like I mean again I'm not how much time I'm putting in this movie you know I'm not letting it take up much of my personal time but like I think a lot of that like I don't know if like the dude's head was there for some of it and then they had like a dummy that they'd set up to like kind of have like a breathing motion or something and then like
Hmm.
then went to like a full dummy. I'm not really sure but yeah, he doesn't make a sound. There's no blood curdling screams. There's no Johnny, Johnny, stop it, you motherfucker. You know, none of that. Like, you know, you fucking dickless fuck, Johnny, fuck you. Like, you know, there's none of that. So yeah, it's just left to linger on the shot, and you're supposed to, I guess, be um swirled up in the violence that you're seeing to this ranger character that you have no real caring about and is a dumbass and he deserved his death really.
Oh yeah, no, I'm like, well, if I get anything out of this is that he dies because he's a fucking idiot.
What's your final number on the ranger's death 1 to 10?
Oh, like a three.
All right, fair, fair. Last death. We mentioned Colt before. He is the it's down to Final Girl and Colt there in the woods, running around. Colt is in love with Final Girl. That's his character arc, if you can call it that. And he's his death, he's chopped in the head with an axe for about 15 minutes. he they have some kind of plan. He's going to be the distraction so Final Girl can do whatever she was going to do. He pops up, he's like, "Hey Johnny, you mother," and bam, axe to the head.
uh Man, I don't know what made me laugh more, the fact that like he was getting chopped for like 15 minutes, or the fact that like while he's getting chopped, like the camera pans around to the girl and she's just fucking standing there watching it for like a solid 5 minutes. And that
Yeah,
shit just fucking cracked me up because she's like, "Oh fuck yeah!" like, like what are you
yeah,
doing? Like,
and it's stuff.
run!
Yeah, it's stuff like that that I feel like that we should be in on the joke, and I feel like that maybe they were like it was more intended to be a little bit tongue in cheek because like this kind of kill and you know the stuff we talked about before with you know the dummy and the body, like sometimes I feel like we are supposed to be in on the joke because yeah she just watches it and then like she's got the necklace because she was girlfriend of Troy, the dick boyfriend, and he gave her the necklace, so she just like slowly takes off the necklace while Johnny is turning Colt into ground beef and like places it around the gas can. And then she's just like, all right, I'm out. And slowly goes out and then starts running out of the forest eventually. But I'm like, yeah, I mean, like I thought it was a hilarious death. Don't get me wrong. Like he's just like it's tropey and it's like subverting that trope. We're like, hey Johnny over here, bam,
Yep.
dead.
Dead.
And then he gets you know, Johnny takes out his frustration from, you know, from years of being in the ground on poor Colt's head. But yeah, just her standing there watching, not doing anything, not using Colt's sacrifice, if you can call it that, to get the fuck out of there, watching it and then just slowly like, oh shit, here you go, John, you can have this back, and like putting that on the gas can and then you know dicking off that. Yeah, like I said, I feel like sometimes we're supposed to be in on the joke a little bit, and it's supposed to be like a little bit more tongue in cheek here. But like, yeah, I'm not really sure of that though. I don't know if it's supposed to be completely played straight, or if we're supposed to come away with it like as being as some of this as hilarious as it was.
Yeah. Oh my God. That just please speed this up.
But yeah, I think for Colt, I mean, like that was the Ranger and the Colts, the other two kind of standouts with the body dragging and or the stab through the stomach girl. I mean, what do you give Colt's death here? Final 1 out of 10.
Oh, like a four.
Fair, fair. It's just shock value, really.
Yeah.
There, that's the real thing about it. Is just the shock value of like just. It reminded me of that scene. You remember that scene in like I think it's more in the director's cut, but a Watchmen where Rorschach's just meat cleavering that dude's head in, and you just see like the flaps coming off in shadows and stuff.
Oh
That's what it
yeah.
reminded me of.
Right.
Uh, After that last kill, our final girl, her name is Chris. So unlike a traditional kind of slasher film, Chris and Johnny don't really have a final showdown. There's no one-on-one Johnny versus final girl, anything like that. While Colt's head's being turned into ground beef for 15 minutes, Chris gently places the golden locket around the gas can. She runs away. She ends up getting turned around in the woods. Ends up getting a big stick stuck through her ankle somehow. Chris eventually finds the road and she's kind of picked up by a random woman who agrees to drive her to the hospital. Um, just a note about the woman that picks Chris up in the truck. The woman driver who picks up Chris after running away from Johnny is played by Lauren Marie Taylor. She played Vicky in Friday the 13th Part 2. Just a little thing I noticed with the little research I did for this film. And she's in the truck with the lady. The lady's driving her to the hospital. She's kind of trying to talk with her and try to keep her awake, keep her from passing out, telling her everything's going to be okay. And you're just, again, we spend a lot of time in the truck. We spend a lot of time with those two. There's another part of that scene we'll kind of get to. But you kind of sit there and like you think, are we building to something? Is something going to go on with this woman?
Oh
Is
yeah,
that
we're
Johnny's
we're we're
mother,
we're built
perhaps?
we're building to
Um,
something, all right.
yeah, and you're like, is Johnny gonna like cut down a tree across the road and the lady's gonna run into it with the truck and get ejected out the front seat and then we're gonna have our final showdown? But no, that's it. The woman is nobody. There's no final fight, kills or scares. Johnny's not seen on screen again. We get a final shot of the gas can. The locket is gone and presumably reclaimed by Johnny, and Johnny is either still out there walking around or he's returned to his slumber now that he's got his mother's locket. It's up to you, I guess, to kind of fill in the blanks. But what they're going
My
for is
money's on he's still cleaving Colt's head. That's what he's been
he
doing this
just got
entire time.
right. He just never stops. Yeah, and as the audience, what they're trying to do is they're leaving it to the audience. You're left to kind of contemplate the nature of violence and brutal impulses and all of this stuff, and that contemplation is set up by the woman delivering a story about her brother, the game warden, and a bear. Do you want to, Andrew, explain a bit about the bear story the woman tells Chris and how you kind of felt about this ending and what it kind
Uh,
of leaves you to, what the filmmakers hope you're leaving and contemplating?
so I don't is so when she's telling this story, she's like, "Oh, like we don't know what happened, but there was this bear and it tore these people apart and it looked like
Cocaine
somebody
Bear.
had, huh?"
Was it Cocaine Bear?
Right? It was Yogi Bear actually.
No.
And like, was it actually like a bear? Was she saying that like, this was like, is she implying that this was like Johnny too, or like this whole fucking story just of nothingness? And I'm like, who gives a fuck? Like between like her telling this story that I don't give a shit about and cutting to fucking long cuts of watching Chris just blank face stare out the fucking window and like there's nothing going on there. I'm like, what is this? Why is this scene in this fucking film? Like, why couldn't we just cut it off after like, she takes off into the woods? Like, I would have been just as happy if it would have ended there. Like, I don't know what she was getting at with this fucking bear story. I don't care. I was watching it at 1.5 speed at this point, and it still felt like it took forever. Like, I don't know, Cody. You fucking tell me. What was the bear story about?
I mean that's what it's there for, is that, yeah, I agree with you. We could have just left it with Chris putting it on the gas can, linger on the shot of the locket and be done with it. This, I know I made a joke before about the art house part of it. This is really the art house part of it, where they the filmmakers are trying to lend a narrative or a social implication to the ending of this film and kind of wrap it up in a story that kind of surmises and really is supposed to let you there and let you contemplate after the film the nature of violence, like I said, and brutal impulses and how violence is um doesn't solve anything. You know, the what is the root of violence and all this stuff that you're these big ideas and stuff wrapped in this low budget, semi cheesy in parts slasher film that apes off of 80s camp films like Friday the 13th and things like that. This is where it really gets like masturbatory in terms of like, oh yeah, this is we got a message here at the end of our film, like for the audience, and you're like, I get what you're doing, but you're like you're trying to beat me over the head with it, and like in a better, smarter film, maybe, but like this is not one of those films I'm gonna leave the cinema or cut off on Shutter, the Shutter app, and be like contemplating the deep meaning of. This is like, you know, this is not like cutting off American History X and contemplating violence. You know what I mean? This
Right,
is like a
exactly.
fucking low budget, like Shutter horror film, and like this is where they really lean into like why I try to say it's, you know, with the long shots and the naturalistic take and the lighting and stuff of the film where they try to lean into the art house style of it. But this is that's really what it's about. And I was like, me, I wanted something else. I wanted to let's keep the schlock going. Let's keep this low budget bullshit going and give me one last, you know, even at the end of the original Friday the 13th, you know, Jason's not in it till the very last shot where the final girl, she's in the boat on the lake and we get like creepy little, like deformed child Jason jumping out and you get one last scare. I was waiting for something like that, like, cause you're aping off and clearly borrowing as much as you can from Friday the 13th because you don't have that actual, IP to use. I was like waiting again, waiting for Johnny to chop down a tree and like push it across the road and like, you know, the lady bump into it and crash into it and get sent flying or something happen. Or like even they're driving down the road and you just see Johnny step out behind them and that's your last shot or something. Like, and you just see Johnny watching them pull away and then you pan down to his hand and you see the locket there or something or whatever. Or like you said, just leave it on the gas can and her escape in the forest. And the bear story, again, like a lot of stuff, it just goes on for too fucking long. And this is not the film for your deep philosophical questions about life and violence. I'm sorry.
No, no, yeah, we could have done without all that.
Yeah, it's just the ending was trying to do something that the rest of the film didn't earn or set up. Like, really, is really the crux of it there. Like, the ending just felt like, all right, give me a break. Somebody went to film school, you know. That's
Right?
the way I kind of felt about it. Like, you know, a couple things here, just real quick before we kind of get into the wrap up here and call this an episode. Um, do you think? Well, let me start with this. What do you think of everything else kind of excluded? What do you think of like the naturalistic approach to the filmmaking here? You know, no cinematic lighting, there's no music. You know, there's lots of Johnny walking around the forest just set to the sounds of the forest and stuff. But what do you think about the naturalistic kind of filmmaking here? Does it work for you? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Like I like all those ideas. Like I don't mind them. I don't care if there's like a score, or good lighting or any of that. Like I can get behind all these ideas in a better film. I did not care for all those ideas in this film because it is a bad film.
And so yeah, my follow up to that. So would you have rather seen a slightly higher budget, let's say, more cinematic, you know, with some cinematic lighting, with some really like, you know, really cinematic shots and things like that, and actually use something like maybe be like set as a Friday the 13th film? Would that have worked better for you, or do you think this premise was just they got as much out of it, no matter if it's Jason or Johnny, that you could?
Yeah, no, I think I would have enjoyed it better if they just would have gone like the traditional route. Um, because I mean, I like the idea and I like the concept of like, hey, let's see things from the killer's point of view, right? Let's follow him. And again, in a better film, I think that they could have really done something with that. Um, it's just, it's just not this film.
Right. Oh,
Maybe we'll have somebody else take a crack at this, or further on down the line, and maybe they'll get it right. But as far as this, like, nah, I'm good.
yeah. I think this, and my last kind of question to you here, I think maybe kind of will kind of lead us into this. But like, I know you mentioned right before we started recording about like how you didn't really care for like 95% of the dialogue delivered in the film was off screen. You want to go into that?
Yeah, so I I didn't like it just because, it's being done with these shots of like, Johnny just walking through the fucking woods, right? And I think the issue that I had with it, I think more has to do with the actors, because I don't think any of the actors were particularly good. I think most of them were actually pretty fucking bad at
Yeah.
their line delivery, at everything. I think a lot of the dialogue come off as flat, just like they were fucking reading it off a piece of paper.
Right.
Um, I think that, because it is off screen, I think that, I mean, maybe that is probably what they did. They probably just recorded it and, threw the audio on top of the fucking scene of Johnny walking through the wood. And I think if they would have just gone about it the normal way and just made like a regular film, it would have forced, them to, maybe realize that they aren't good actors. If the camera would have been on them while they were reading all these lines. Yeah, I just, again, I don't care for it. In a better film, I'm sure this works. Not in this one.
Yeah, the idea, I think, like you said, I think the execution is the problem. The idea of it, like, because like in all these slasher films, right? You get the traditional, you get your killer, and he only pops up when we're not seeing him. We're seeing the kills and things through other people's perspectives, or just the quickly with the killer. Then we're back to our whoever our protagonists are. But like in all these slasher films, you get like, oh, we get the exposition. Oh, well, Johnny's out there and this is Johnny's thing. And then you get like, what's the plan? It's like, oh, well, me and Steve, we need to go hiking to the ranger station and we need to do this. And then there's other parts of the story. It was like, well, we got to lure Johnny to this spot, and all the context and exposition you get for whatever the plan is or whatever the characters try to do. And like the idea is like, of the film is like, instead of actually hearing those and seeing those full conversations, we pick up in the middle of them or later on when they're being enacted. Or like, it's like we don't see the conversation that says, hey, me and Johnny, or me and Ted have to go hiking down to the ranger station. We just like, we see him come back like, oh, we went to the fucking ranger station. There's a fucking dude there. They gotta get the fuck out of here. um so like that principle, I think if you like really focused on like what you're setting up and having the characters do between scenes, and really like what we're hearing and what we don't, and really focus on that a little bit more, like in a Friday the 13th film or in this film, I think that's interesting to play with, is like where you're just picking up pieces of the story and you're kind of filling in the gaps based on your prior knowledge of like these camp slasher films. But what I think is the problem here is I think you need, in this film in particular, like you need something to cut from these long ass John after the first 3 or 4 times of Johnny walking through the forest and the nature sounds, and we linger on it. We need something's got to break up because it gets monotonous. That's my problem. We need a little bit more. Maybe we do focus on a character or two here a little bit longer. Maybe we focus a little bit and give a little bit more time to Chris, the final girl, to develop her a little bit of a character. But in this,
Hmm.
the final girl trope is wasted because there's no final confrontation. But like, we give somebody else a little bit because you got to break up the monotony of just Johnny walking through the forest. And then some will be like, well,
Hmm.
that's the whole point, is from their perspective or whatever. But like, as a viewer, it's fucking goes on too long and it's fucking annoying at some points. And like you said, this film should be watched at like 1.5 speed to get through some of that, because a lot of this film, there's about 15 minutes of actual plot and things happening, and the rest of it is walking through the forest. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, I think that premise of like following the killer around, I think would work a lot better if it was a killer like uh the Scream. the Scream guy,
Yes.
someone that's an
Yeah.
actual person and he like has to prepare and like do things and is an actual thinking human being instead of this
Yeah.
zombie man that just walks and just puts an axe in people's heads.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I hadn't really considered, but yeah, like yeah, especially when you talk about something like Scream, where like it's for the it's a real person, and like you're having to see them like skulk around and maybe they almost get caught and they like jump back behind a tree or something, or they
Exactly.
they
Yeah.
duck under something, and you're seeing how they're going about it, and like man, that would really work good in a Scream movie, this premise, and like see how you don't know who the killers are, but like you see that there's a couple working together, and maybe you see how they coordinate. Maybe they have hand signals to each other or something, be like, you go upstairs, I'll stay down here, kind of thing. And like you see
Hmm.
that, like that premise I think would work fantastic. And like, Screen producers, there's a free idea right there for you if you ever watch this. Make a Scream movie with this premise and let's see it from the killer's perspective of the ghost face or multiple ghost face. Like I think that would be fantastic here in this, because you have a silent protagonist that is supernatural, that is just this walking brick shit house that it's like the whole Jason thing is like Jason is like the shark from Jaws. He just moves and kills and continues on.
Hmm.
He's like the Michael Myers, the Jason trope. Like you need something more, like you need like a Jack the Ripper type or a Ghostface or something like that, like to like really carry this premise a little bit better, because too much too much walking through the forest, too much nothing going on, nothing happening, not learning anything, not moving the story, just shots of nature. If I want to see that, I'll watch a nature documentary. I'll watch
Right.
something about pangolins, you know what I mean?
Pine Pine Langs.
Panglings. All right. Just a little note I had here. Chris Nash said in a 2024 interview with Pointer Reviews, he spoke about basically they reshot about 70% of this film. They had an actor,
Oh man.
completely different lead actor playing Johnny. They had a medical problem about a week and a half into production. They brought in another guy. There was like some size issues, those kind of things. It was not only size issues, but it was also like the way that person carried themselves, the gait of their walk, how their foot, the weight of their foot, how it fell. And so they made a decision to basically scrap everything they had and basically reshoot around 70% of this. So I could imagine whatever budget they had, like
That
spent.
to me is fucking mind-boggling, Cody. That a fucking like I don't understand the logic. Like who gives a fuck? Like,
Yeah.
oh, like, you can tell like how they carry themselves and the gait of their walk and all that. And nobody gives a fuck. I never once like, was paying attention to any of that. Like, really, like they had to reshoot 70% of the film. That is so fucking stupid. Like, what they should have done is maybe recast everyone else, because again, I think everyone else is a bad fucking actor,
Right.
you know? Like, my God, man, that is like how like a producer or like somebody else didn't fucking step in and like, hey, are you fucking dumb? Like, no, we're not gonna reshoot like three-quarters of this fucking film just because our Johnny like, got hurt. We gotta swap him out for somebody that's like maybe 2 inches shorter or some shit. Like that is crazy.
Yeah, the line here from the interview says, "We only realized how much that mattered once we did a rough assembly of those first 4 weeks and could see the stark differences. They're almost imperceptible until you realize that is really the entire movie. It's just watching somebody walk and move and studying their behavior. But that was only one of the reasons we felt it necessary to pick up production and start again completely." He goes on to say he had a selfish region. He'd always envisioned the film being shot in the northern Ontario wilderness, and I guess they were shooting somewhere else, so they used this recast of Johnny as another reason to pick up and move locations to northern Ontario. And again, all of it seems like you said dumb, and like he even says imperceptible, and it is. No one is focusing enough on Johnny and his movements to notice a different gait or him being a little shorter. Put fucking lifts in his shoes. Whatever. Like you said, that is not a thing that I would completely scrap my entire production. And like, you'd have to burn through what you burnt money shooting for 4 weeks and then on a low budget film anyway. So now you're like just robbing Peter to pay Paul. So you're taking away from your effects budget and everything else. It just seems like a pretty shittily handled production all the way around, if you ask me.
Yeah, no, if I was a movie studio and I fucking read that, I'd be like, well, I'm never gonna fucking hire this Chris Nash guy because he is clearly very bad at managing money and being a director.
Yeah, 4
Like
weeks.
that is
Yeah,
absolutely wild.
yeah, 4 weeks in, unfortunately, his lead actor, if you can call it a lead actor, his lead walker, gets some kind of medical condition, has to step out of the production instead of just continuing on with the 4 weeks of shot footage. This dude has recast, goes back to zero, reshoots 70% of it, and moves the production to a completely different area of the country or another country. Yeah, that's not somebody I would trust a big budget production to. Um, don't know what
Yeah.
that dude has on the horizon, but I don't think a lot of studios would be lining up to give him a multi-million-dollar production deal or something like that.
I shit you not. I looked him up because I was trying to see what music video he directed because I wanted to go watch it. But on his IMDb, it says A Violent Nature 2 is
I
what he's got
saw
coming up.
that. Yeah,
I didn't know if that were like how real that is.
I don't either,
And
but I saw it.
yeah, so
Here's
I'm not
hoping.
watching
No,
the next one, Cody.
yes,
I'm not
yes,
doing
you are.
it.
All right,
You can't
Andrew.
make me.
Oh, I can make you. Andrew, give us your review score and your final thoughts for In a Violent Nature.
Yeah, so I give this what did I give Trigger Warning? A 2?
I think so.
Yeah, I give this one a 2 too.
A two-two.
Uh yeah, no, I like the idea, bad execution, very boring, a whole lot of nothing goes on in this film. Like 80% of the kills are just throwaway, like they're nothing special, they're just run of the mill stuff. Yeah, I mean, I don't recommend anybody watch this.
Yeah, I can't dispute you. I'm going to go with a 4. I'm going to say subpar. I'm a little bit more lenient on it, but I don't think that that's any kind of claim to quality. I think it's an interesting premise that sounds better on paper than it was in execution here on film. Again, seemingly somewhat troubled production that made some baffling decisions behind the scenes about what to do with the film. Lots of monotonous long shots that really don't drive the film forward. After you've watched Johnny walk through the forest the first few times, it's time to switch it up and give me something different instead of going back to that well over and over. Some of the kills range from completely dumb, basic, or off screen to somewhat creative and a little bit memorable. And then just a lot of them, though, are just like, meh, okay.
Yeah.
That happened. A couple get create scores for creativity, but a lot of them don't. There's not really that many memorable ones other than the girl with the hook through the stomach and things like that. It borrows from a genre and from the camp films of the '80s. And again, for me, I'm not sure if this is tongue in cheek. I'm not sure if we're supposed to be in on the joke in some of these where it's clearly walking around with a dummy or all these other bad decisions and things like that we see and some poor effects. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be tongue in cheek. I'm not sure if we're supposed to be laughing along with it, but obviously in our case we did laugh at it. I don't know if we were supposed to be laughing along with it. The film isn't clear enough in its tone to tell me that, but we definitely were laughing at it at parts. And I don't it's not something I would advise you to seek out. Like you said, I don't really recommend it too highly. It's definitely kind of a overhyped mess, I would say, is how I would kind of classify it. So, if you're just bored and you've got a free subscription to Shutter or something, or get things for free off the internet, knock yourself out. But yeah, I wouldn't pay money for an In a Violent Nature too. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about this film, Andrew?
No, no, I'm good.
All right, buddy. Well, I appreciate you joining me again. Hopefully we can we'll do another terrible movie here soon, get you back in, make you watch something that you have no interest in or it ends up being absolutely terrible because that's the running joke here apparently.
I cannot wait. Kevin Costner, here we come.
Yes, yes. Horizon, An American Story is on my radar, folks. Stay tuned, see if that happens. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Feel free to send us an email or get in touch with us on social media. Talcapes will return. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye, guys.
Later.